Because again, when I was younger, I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a little, but I could care less. I was like, hey, if you don't, when I'm 22 playing around New York with my friends, I don't know any better. I'm like, oh, if you, the listener, like, if you don't like this, that's on you. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, just that
Right.
punk thing of like, no, we're just gonna do this, head down.
Yeah.
And I really started to appreciate like, wow, how can I include the listener or honor them? I'm not gonna like compromise the art, but
Hmm.
how can I honor them and include them in the thing? Because I need to interact with something.
Real quick, if you're new here, welcome to the TrevBeats Show. Hit subscribe so we can keep building together. And to my regulars who show up every time, I see you. And your viewership means everything. If you ever want to help fuel this channel so we can do even bigger things, you can grab some fresh gear from the merch store below or jump into the backstage membership next to the subscribe button. Now back to the show.
TrevBeats Show, TrevBeats Show. TrevBeats Show, TrevBeats Show.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the TrevBeats Show. Now, understand that today's guest is one of the people that is pushing the envelope. Now, if you spend any time around my show or my ecosystem, you know that I live by a few things on this platform. One is serve the song, and the other one is music or pocket over everything. And today's guest is a visionary who embodies both. While completely rewriting the vocabulary of modern drumming, he has seamlessly bridged the gap between electronic percussion, jazz, driving projects from his own beat music to all these other jazz quartets to working on Bowie's legendary final album, Blackstar. He's an innovator, a composer, and an absolute monster behind the kit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my brother, the one and only Mark Guiliana. What's up, bro? What's up,
Oh
man?
man, you're way too kind. Making me nervous with that intro. I
How you
appreciate
doing?
it.
How
I
you doing,
appreciate it.
man?
Good to see you. Good to
Yeah, you
see you.
too, man. You too, man. So I know you've been super busy. You know, you just got back from doing the Chicago drum show. How was that, man? Was that cool?
That was cool. I mean, it kind of warmed my heart a bit. It took me back to actually, I grew up in New Jersey, like 20 minutes from where they used to have the Modern Drummer festivals in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I would go to all those and just to remember the magic. I don't know if you went to any of those. I mean, I in the
I
90s,
don't
I don't know if you're flying cross country
I
to
don't think so.
to,
No,
to go
no,
to a
no.
drum show, but all the videos. I mean,
Sure,
they
of
were on
course.
VHS in the day,
Sure, for
and
sure.
to be able to get close to my heroes, and you're in this college auditorium, maybe 1,000 seats, 1,500 seats max.
Yeah.
And it was in the day where you get the magazine and you cut out the ad and you send in cash in an envelope and they mail you your tickets.
I forgot about that
Um,
period.
yeah, right, right. I mean, first of all, just having a
Wow.
magazine at all.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, you would see the lineup, and it was
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody would do it,
Yeah.
and it just had this energy to it, which is really difficult to recreate. And just the way things are now, it's hard to find that. But this show had some of that. It was a big, exposition floor.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, some of the big companies were there. Obviously, I was there with Agop and Gretsch, and I was hanging with Scott. It was great to be, with
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
But
Shout out to Scott. Yeah.
yes, Scott Liken, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was mostly a lot of vintage stuff, used stuff, small shops in the Midwest coming and showing their stuff. So it just had this like optimism and a positivity that was refreshing because
Yeah.
sometimes just sitting at home and looking at the phone, everything feels like doomsday,
Yeah,
which
man.
may be right. I don't I
Right.
don't know, but just to be around that energy was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's super dope, bro. Yeah, man. Like it's wild right now, and a lot of people don't know, they don't know what's going on. A lot of people don't know exactly the depth of it. And sometimes, we feel a little insulated, like it hasn't come to my doorstep yet. But, one of my reps from one of my companies just bought a house in Garden Grove. So look what happened, had to get out of there. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's tough, but these type of events, man, are really more important now than ever. I think NAM has kind of got a new resurgence, man, because the fraternal aspect of it is it's really like therapy now for a lot of people, man, across the country. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I
but
haven't been since
oh,
it's back, so I hope to get down there next year.
yeah, it's starting to feel, it's different. It's never going to be like pre-pandemic. I mean, I can't say never, but it hasn't returned to that. But it does have a new kind of, you could tell it's like a new generation of memories, like a new NAM, just like everything else is new. So now you have the new generation kind of morphing it into what it's going to be for them, which is kind of cool to see. You know what I'm saying?
Cool.
So,
Cool.
But yeah, man. Well, listen, let's talk a little bit about some drum stuff, man. So you bridge acoustic and electric stuff. Now, let's talk about your background first. I would assume you are primarily, your first thing is you are a jazz drummer. Now, am I wrong, or is that a fair assumption?
It was towards the beginning, but not first, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any musicians in my family or anything, so I kind of stumbled upon music, and it was just it was the mid '90s, and I was watching MTV, so it was Soundgarden and Nirvana
Right.
and Chili Peppers and all that. So that's what got me to the drums.
Mm-hmm.
And in my earliest lessons, I just wanted to be Chad Smith, you know what I mean?
Right.
And
Shout to
and
Chad.
then yeah, and of course Matt Cameron, all those guys. I mean, talk not to. I don't want to live in the '90s for the whole interview, but again, a time when you can turn on the TV and see musicians playing music,
Yeah, man.
and
Yeah.
yep, and so it was. And even if it's a music video, oftentimes the dudes will be in there, even if it's a sound stage, and you can see the setup. And I'm trying to
Yeah.
pause it and be like, wait, Matt has, well, how big is that crash on the right? What is that? Things like that,
Right. Right.
which was really fun. And so, yeah, it was those guys that got me to the drums. And then I started taking lessons. And my first teacher was this incredible teacher named Joe Bergamini in
Mm.
Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me a great foundation. And included in that was just checking out all different styles. And when we kind of got to jazz, something happened, and it really that I ran through that door,
Yeah.
So pretty quickly it hit me in a way I didn't know what was going on, but Elvin, Tony, Roy, Jack, like the Blakey,
Yeah.
it's just like I don't know what this is, but it's doing something to me. It lit
Mm.
me up, and I just took that path. And really, it was like the improvising that really spoke to me.
Yeah.
And I still think that like that's the thing that actually is, I think if I had to break it down, the thing I'm most drawn to. I think, obviously because jazz is usually the place where it's most featured
Yeah.
and such a staple of the music, that's really where I learned about who I was as a musician. And I don't really present myself in a traditional jazz way often,
Mm-hmm.
but it's definitely coming from that, you know,
Right.
the core of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where I got hip to you online and starting to hear records. And then I think we finally met first in person, I think like backstage in Montreux, right? I think that's
Exactly.
maybe the
That was a
first time we met.
crazy bill. That was a triple bill. Triple bill. I was there with Brad Meldau and Sco, this
Right.
trio thing,
Yep.
and you were there with Herbie,
Yep.
and then John McLaughlin's band played. And I
Right.
was just thinking, this is this is an overwhelming bill.
I know,
It was
bro.
like the Miles alumni night, or
Yeah, man.
something. But
Yeah,
that
dude.
was trippy. No, I remember hanging with you and Terrace because I was still living in Jersey. I was on the East Coast.
Ah, that's right. Yep.
Um, but of
Yep.
course knew about you guys and yeah, it was great to connect. And I
That
have a
was
little
cool.
story. I don't know if you remember this because
Yeah.
this was 2016
Something like
maybe.
that. Yeah, maybe somewhere around
When
there.
did the
Yeah.
Clap Stack actually come out?
It
Like
came out
as
2017, I think, officially. So I think that
okay,
may have been because I think that may have also been where I saw Justin. I because Justin was the first guy to play it publicly, and I think I saw him around there. So it was probably the same tour, but I don't think it was Montreux. So that was right
okay.
around the time when it came out. Like it
So,
was
but you
coming out.
had it.
Yeah,
You had it in your kit.
yeah, yeah.
And full disclosure, and I like telling this story because
Right.
it's it comes around as a compliment. But you were like, we're hanging backstage and we're looking at each other's setups, and you're like, yo, man, I'm working on this thing, and like it's like an 808 clap, but it's acoustic, and to be honest, like first I'm like, cool,
Right,
cool, but
right,
like, well, why wouldn't you just have an 808 clap? Like
right,
before
right,
I heard it, the
right.
classic thing. So I was like, all right, cool, like sounds cool. I trust you, all good. But it didn't, you know, register,
Yeah,
in a particular way. And then I'm watching side stage and I'm seeing you play this thing 2 hours later that night, and it's
right.
just like, damn, that thing is special. It
I
really is
appreciate that,
that.
man. Yeah,
And
thank you,
because
man.
it's not just an 808 clap, it's inspired by it, but of course,
Right.
like the acoustic nature, it's doing a different thing, the way it's getting into the microphones.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, if it was a pad, you wouldn't be playing it the way you're playing it. It would
Sure.
be, I assume, psychologically it's different. Maybe
Yeah.
it feels different on stage to even the other musicians. Then they need it in their wedge or something, stuff like that. So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it really felt like this, unique instrument,
Yeah.
and then I haven't heard much about it since. How did it? No, I'm just kidding.
I remember, you know what?
Oh my
It's funny.
gosh.
I also remember the side of that stage, and you loved the way that that trash hit was sounding. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
using it as a
Mm-hmm.
ride on my left side. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, I never really thought about it as a ride on my left. So I started using it like on the right side, like as a second ride vibe, after you
Nice.
said that, because I didn't even, I wasn't registering it like that. But, listen, bro, we all just try to keep each other inspired, man. And, you're one of the people that I saw, like what I call stacking the drums, like putting things on the drums. You
Mm.
and Chris really were the main guys I saw doing that, putting things on drums. And I have my own version of that I have been doing for a while. But like when I saw y'all do it in the other, just creative things and little weird things and bells and bottle caps or whatever, I was like, yeah, this is a new era of drumming. Like it really is a new way that we all started making the drums more, unique to us. So,
Yeah.
that was inspiring coming from you too, man. And it's like, I was a real big fan of your playing and still am, of course. And it's like, now I'm just checking you out because you really now are into this bridging thing. So you can play jazz. We have established that. That's great. What made you get into like this whole acoustic, electronic, D&B, just this whole energy, man? What inspired that change?
It was actually a really similar, almost the same story as
Mm-hmm.
like jazz punched me in the face. It was, I got to college, now I'm in school
Mm-hmm.
for jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a friend gave me this, I remember Burn CD. I remember his handwriting on it. And it was a Square Pusher record called Feed Me Weird Things. So
Mm.
now it's like 99, 2000 or so.
Yeah.
And that record was a few years old already. But I put it on, and similarly, in my mind, I didn't know what was going on, but in my chest, it was like, whoa, I gotta check this out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it felt like the first time I heard Tony, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but something's going on that I need to, chase.
Yeah.
So that's how I felt with guys like Square Pusher and Aphex Twin, and
Mm-hmm.
music like that. And then, of course, those guys, there's a certain, they're not drummers. And I've always really, I'm sure you could speak to this. I always love trying to play parts that non-drummers came up with, because it's just inevitably going to be coming from a new angle,
Right.
and then it requires your own creativity to try to repurpose this thing on the instrument to try to play in real time. So the drums are an acoustic instrument, obviously, and it's like, if okay, so the music I'm inspired by happens to be electronic, but I'm always going to return to this acoustic instrument and try to get the spirit of it. So to me, it's kind of all the same. The
Yeah.
way I could be inspired by Tony and try to bring some version of it back to the kit, it's the same, pulling from a different source, but it returns to the kit. And so in a way, like, you're you're right to say it's like, you know bringing things together, but to me
Yeah.
it's like, I happen to play an acoustic instrument, so wherever the inspiration comes from, it's going to come out in that way. And
Yeah.
what's nice too is, a lot of that drum and bass stuff, depending on who it is impossible to execute in real time. So
Sure.
by failing, inevitably failing, you land in a place that's unique to you.
Yeah.
You know, like for example, if we checked out like a GAD thing real quick
Mhm.
and this beautiful like GAD groove or something, and then we take an hour and try to figure it out and come back, we'd probably be, you know, it wouldn't be GAD, but we'd be close, and you and I would sound similar.
Right.
It'd be close because it's on a kit, it's a guy playing in real time on an acoustic kit, so
Yeah.
we could get close. But if we took even 8 bars of some Aphex Twin shit and go our separate ways, we're gonna come back with really different results. And
Yeah.
that's what started lead me to like, oh, what if I put this kind of thing on the snare drum to try to help make it sound like this particular sample? And those weren't my ideas. I was seeing guys just in New York. I was really inspired by the avant-garde scene and the free scene, the downtown scene where it's like anything goes. People are, you know, putting
Yeah.
all types of things all over the drums. Now, oftentimes that, you know, output was like super avant-garde and pretty wild, but
Yeah.
those sounds and those ideas were definitely inspiring to try to, oh, if I see Jim Black like scraping the drums with a chain or something,
Right.
you know, maybe that's not my particular expression, but what if I, when I put that chain on the snare drum, all of a sudden that's starting to sound like that Aphex Twin track. Oh,
Right.
that's interesting. Whatever. So that's where a lot of those things started to come together. And yeah, I just love that, you know, because it's a non-drum set source of inspiration,
Yeah.
you're forced to include your own ideas or your own creativity of how to say that thing.
Yeah.
And by definition, there's more of you in it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I mean, and you know, it's interesting because you kind of started developing that, and then you did something now that I'm starting to see kind of replicated, which is the whole solo drum record. And it's like, you
Mm.
know, obviously aside from, you know, our guy that's running around, you know, with the mic and doing all that crazy stuff with the snare drum at these art galleries, aside from
Have you
that
seen him?
guy,
Have you
I
seen
haven't
him
seen him
live?
live. No, I haven't seen it
Me
live.
neither. I know he was at Zebulon, and I really wanted to go, and I was out of town.
Hey,
Yeah,
you talk about creating a niche, man. He started
man,
his own little following and the
man.
whole nine. So, you know, but aside from that, I mean, you doing your thing, and now, you know, I've seen Nate do the same thing, and so
Hmm.
it's like, you know, before we only had drummers that could sing, and it would have to be just a drummer happened to be the front man. But now with the solo drum thing, it's kind of a lane, and I think that, you know, there'll be more and more people doing that. So you recorded Mark in what, 2024, I want to say,
Yep,
and
yep,
that was at 606, yeah. um
exactly.
yeah, so I mean, you know, then you weren't just playing drums, you were also playing, you know, synths and all that, and we kind of saw
Yep.
your process on you know, social media. How did that writing, like how did that influence you playing drums, if you were writing, you know, on the keyboard, or were you, like, how did you come up with the inspiration for that project?
Yeah, so that one definitely was the culmination of you know, I was just trying to, how can I try to get all my experiences or influences into one place, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because over the years I've tried to be careful to like, okay, beat music is the more electronic leaning expression. I have the acoustic quartet, that's the more acoustic expression, and then things in between as well. Or I'll get to say something as a sideman that maybe I don't get to say in my bands, things like that.
Yeah.
But over the years of having these different projects, the they've always needed like, you know, I'm always trying to feed the repertoire. So over the last 10 years or so, composition has definitely become more of a focus. And
Yeah.
whereas when I was 25, I was just all I was thinking about was the drums. And if I had a minute, I'd run to the drums. And now more so, it's if I get a minute, I end up at the piano just trying to work on stuff. I just wanted to like put the drums at the front, but also include the compositions too, and pretty intentionally, like on the compositional, the more there were like drum only songs and then songs with no drums, and that
Hmm.
felt like the formula that made the most sense for that statement. But just trying to document, you know, everything that led up to it and just kind of where my head was at.
Well, on the tech side, so when it came to live, like how were you, you know, putting out your tracks live when you played to them? Were you using Ableton, or were you using something that was static, or were you able to shift the arrangements live, or how were you doing that on the production side?
It was quite different live. The you know, the big in a big picture, yes, the show represented the record, or the record represented the show, but
Hmm.
I wasn't really playing the like on piano. I have very limited technique. I can't really improvise on piano, so I
Right.
played a couple of the compositions from the record at the show.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be fixed every night. But then the drumming, I um, I had different kind of stations, different instruments set up that would inspire me to go in a particular direction. But I'm improvising when I get
Yeah.
there. So like the map was fixed each
Yeah.
night. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll start here, and then maybe go here, and then I play a song, and then I end up over here. But what I was doing at each station was improvised.
Nice. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Hey, bro, that's inspiring. You know, that put a battery in my back as far as like, okay, there's
cool.
an audience for this. People rock with drums, like it's possible. So now, you know, the creative experience, you can put your own creativity out there, and you know, it's possible, man. So that's super, super dope. Now,
No, thank you.
yeah,
No, I
man.
just want to say I was thinking a lot about, like, for me, well, two things. It was something I had thought about a lot over the years, and I was always just too nervous to even follow through. And I knew, like, okay, the only way to pull this off is to just put it in the calendar, book a show. I booked Zebulon. I booked a
Mm-hmm.
couple at Zebulon here in
Mm-hmm.
LA,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew as it was approaching, because I was never going to feel ready, in quotes, you know.
Right. Right.
Um, so I knew I just had to book it, and then when that day comes, there's either a show, or there isn't, you know.
Right.
So I, yeah, as expected, I was feeling these nerves that I hadn't felt in a long time. You know, I
Wow.
humbly, I always felt like the guy. I don't get nervous, you know. Like,
Yeah.
we're
Right.
just gonna go, we go play. You know, that's what we do. For me, the playing is the most relaxing part of the day on the road. You know, and like,
Right.
oh, finally, now
Right.
we can just play. You know.
Yeah.
Um, Now maybe if I look over and I see you and Herbie in the wings, I might get a little nervous, but um, but that thing of like, okay, that day came and I started to feel all this stuff, and it actually helped me like re rethink my relationship to being nervous, because when I was young,
Mm.
nervous started to feel like I wasn't prepared, or something like what's going to go wrong. And now this version of nervous was like, oh wow, I really care, and like this is important to me. And it was more about like, it almost became like a positive signal of like, yes, you're entering this vulnerable place, and that's the point. You know what I mean?
Ah. Mm-hmm.
So
That's
yeah,
pretty
so that
major,
was
bro.
fun. And then I just thought, like, what are our expectations of what is a show? And
Mm.
our expectations change based on where we're going. So like, if I go see you with Herbie at Disney Hall or something. Okay, I'm going to pay X amount of dollars. I know what seat I'm in, and I assume I'm going to get the highest, the highest level of musicianship. These guys see my hero play the songs I know. Boom! It's like
Right.
this contract, right?
Right.
And
Right.
Herbie doesn't have to play the hits if he doesn't want. I'll still be
Mm-hmm.
happy. It'll still be great. But it's this kind of social contract. Like, I buy a ticket, you do that. We're all happy,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
get that thing.
Yeah.
But if I buy a ticket to see, and then also I buy a ticket to see Dave Chappelle at the Hollywood Bowl,
Right.
he comes out and he does an hour.
Yeah.
He talks into a microphone for an hour,
Yeah.
makes everybody laugh, and he leaves. Okay, cool.
Right.
That's those. We all agree on these expectations, and we're all happy, right?
Right. Right.
But then I started to like play with those expectations. Like, what if you buy a ticket to see Herbie, and he comes out and he talks for an hour? Now,
Right.
personally, I would I would actually love that. I would love to
Yeah.
hear his thoughts. But as an audience member, you're like, wait, this isn't this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Or if Chappelle comes out and, I don't know, if he starts playing piano for an hour, you're like, wait, this isn't. So it's like there's so much about what the environment tells us, our expectations of someone coming in, or what you might already know about this person, and it helps build those expectations. And then as a performer, you know it's like, do you acknowledge those expectations, and how much do you meet them, or how much do you include them in your thinking? Also, I was thinking about like a DJ. If you go see
Mm-hmm.
a DJ you like, I'm not expecting that DJ to like make music from scratch in the moment. It's like, no, you're gonna play the stuff that you either made at home if you're a producer that's making the music, or you're playing other people's music, and your role for that night is to create this vibe in the room and
Right.
keep the energy going. Like, and that is great too. Or you go see a movie. I don't expect the movie to be different the second time I go see it. Like, no, this is that art form.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I started to play with all that. Like, wait, how can I disarm people from like what their expectations are? And
Mm.
can I pull from these different expectations and be like, oh, so I did have a visual element that was like static.
Oh. Oh.
I
Okay.
didn't interact with it really. It was like I just made this video, this 90-minute video at home.
Hmm.
And so that was going. And then there were moments of like some spoken word things. And there were moments of improvising and moments of, compositional things. So I was trying to like, how many different things can I pull from? Because yes, at the end of the day, it's like one dude on stage, but um, I would like to believe you leave there. It didn't, yeah, I'm playing a lot of drums, but it's not like a drum
Right.
show almost.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Right.
So all that to say, just trying to pull from all those different influences, and again, it really made me think more about like relationship with the listener. Because again, when I was younger, I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating a little, but I could care less. I was like, hey, if you don't, when I'm 22 playing around New York with my friends, I don't know any better. I'm like, oh, if you, the listener, like, if you don't like this, that's on you. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, just that
Right.
punk thing of like, no, that we're just gonna do this head down,
Yeah.
And I really started to appreciate like, wow, how can I include the listener or honor them? I'm not gonna like compromise the art, but
Hmm.
how can I honor them and include them in the thing? Because I need to interact with something.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, because
Yeah,
drums. It just depends on who the audience is. Some for regular people, it could they could get a little off put by just drums. But
definitely.
yeah. But that's awesome. And guess what? You're actually trying uncharted territory. You're taking the risk. You're pushing, and you're not afraid to fail. All these things that the greatest jazz musicians all lived by. I mean, Miles said it to
Mm,
Herbie. Herbie said it to us. Stevie said it to Stanley. You make a mistake, play it again. It's like, can't be
hmm.
afraid to fail when you're trying something uncharted, man, because the easiest thing is always, what's been done already. It's much harder to
Totally.
go, just like when you go in the workforce, it's a lot easier to go work for an established company than start your own, right? So, I mean, hey man, kudos to that. And, the whole energy and, you're going to keep pushing. I know because I'm always trying to figure it out when I'm doing my research.
Straight '08.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
straight
yeah, yeah,
08.
yeah.
Yeah, straight 08. I don't know
No,
why I said
that's
straight eighth. That's
no,
hella
no, all
funny.
good, all
Yeah.
good. Um,
With my man Keyon and
no,
Sam Barsh. Yeah, man.
man, Barsh was the first guy I met at college, so we
Oh
go
wow. Oh
way back.
wow.
We went
Wow.
to William Patterson University in New Jersey, and
Wow.
I saw this dude walking around at freshman orientation. I see a dude with a Thelonious Monk shirt on. I'm like, hey. So yeah, he was the first guy I met, and we've been fast friends ever since. And yeah, he and I met Keyon because Barsh and Keyon met in high school doing
Got it.
some, you know, national
Sure. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
youth thing.
Yeah.
Um, so Keyon wasn't at school, but he was kicking around New York, and I met him back then too. So
Yeah.
this was kind of a reunion of sorts. And yeah, we just got together for a day and just put stuff down. And Barsh was like, "Man, it's a record." So I was
Yeah,
like,
man.
"There you go, there you go."
Yeah, no, I feel you,
Yeah,
bro. That's
yeah,
I can't wait for that, especially to have all y'all, but then this whole 808 aesthetic and like,
hmm,
yeah, that's gonna be bananas, bro.
for
So
sure, for
that's
sure.
super dope. That's super dope, man. So let's talk a little bit to our drummer viewers here and talk a little gear. So I know you're playing Gretsch drums and Istanbul Agop and Remo.
Yep.
What else? What's and tell me, specifically about your setups and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's kind of two main setups of with my more acoustic band is just like, a bop kit, 18, 12, 14.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I'll bring like a broadcaster, Gretsch broadcaster, the new ones, but they have that older aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I got several years ago, almost 10 years ago now, I got a kit in a white satin flame, which I had saw all these photos of Elvin playing a white satin flame, and I was like, okay, that's
Yeah.
I need that
I
one.
think he played that in the
So,
Cowboy movie, right? Didn't he play that in the Cowboy
oh, did
movie?
he?
I
Did
think
he?
so.
I would
Yeah,
have
I
to
think
check.
so. Yeah, man.
But yeah, so and then um, yeah, so that's a very traditional setup, and then with the more beat music project, it's like same drums, bigger drums, 22, usually just a 16 floor and a
Mm-hmm.
snare drum.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I definitely like the smaller setups, but they inspire me to try to get as much out of them as I can. And then
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, the Bob kit, it's like coded ambassadors on everything, coded ambassadors all around. The other kit, it's I have the stuff really kind of bottomed out. So
Mm-hmm.
um, what would that be? A clear emperor on the floor or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, pretty down the middle. The cymbals, of course, I'm always bringing around. Um, I have two with the acoustic. I was just in New York. We just did a week at the Village Vanguard with my band, which is like
Ah,
for me again just the Elvin energy, yeah, all
sure.
that
Sure.
juju in the air. But no, I had that set up as two 22 30th anniversary rides with one has six rivets and, and one has three. And
Mm-hmm.
they're, as they're I get asked all the time. I don't know if there's a gig that goes by where someone doesn't ask me about the cymbals.
Sure.
And to be honest, I really like being able to say that like it's it's just off the shelf, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they sound so good, but
I know. I know,
they're
man.
just off the shelf. I mean, these two are I've developed a special bond with them, but they
Right.
still are off the shelf and they're a little on the heavier side, which I guess they've been calling medium
Mm-hmm.
recently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, they're heavier than I had ever played, but they play light.
Yeah.
They behave in a light way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the different rivets and 14-inch hats, and they're yeah, everyone's like, what are they? And I'm like,
Yeah.
on paper, it's the same symbol,
Exactly.
and
Different sizes.
so
Yeah.
yeah, but even the same, they're two 22s, so
Right.
they
Right.
they
Right.
are the same. In the catalog, it's the
Right.
same symbol, but it's so nice to just really have all the two different worlds.
Yeah,
And
man.
then yeah, with beat music, I'll sometimes bring like smaller hats as a little like closed hats or something, just to have access to more of those maybe like programmed sounds,
Mm-hmm.
or lean on that influence. But yeah, and then most recently, the last 5 years actually, I was doing a lot of touring with an artist named Saint Vincent, more
Sure.
rock thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was bigger drums and bigger cymbals, and those were traditionals, Agop traditionals, and 20s and 22s, and a little on the heavier side.
Yeah.
Um, so that was but they're still warm. They still have character. They'll get through and they'll project more, but there's always like a smokiness in there that's really nice.
Man, no symbols are, bro. They're just every time I stumble across something when I'm going through storage or going through some of the symbol vaults that I have, and it's like, dude, it's just unreal how good these cymbals sound, man.
Hmm.
I just cut an organ trio record and I used a 22 traditional. I used the Joey Warnaker ride, which is unbelievable. I had some rivets put in it, and then I used the 24 traditional, and man, I
Oh,
was just
damn.
like, dude, I know it seems crazy, but it's so good, bro. Like these cymbals they're just versatile, man, and crazy. And obviously it's how you play them, and and how you set them up. And I noticed, and let's go back to that. I'm gonna go back to that Montreux. I saw you in that particular gig with no wing nuts. Is that always the case in the
Mm.
jazz situation, and you're changing rides? Because I noticed that, and I started doing that for a
Oh,
while. Like, why not? Why not change a ride for a different song if it's a different vibe? But is that kind of
interesting.
yeah? I saw that, bro. I was like, oh, that's dope. You know what I'm
Cool.
saying?
Yeah, I think as long as the angle that just started. That was, I think, just being in New York and having like 10 minutes to set up at some club when the other
Sure.
band finishes, and you're like, but I realized, yeah, as I started to lay stuff on the drums, if I don't do it that much anymore, but every now and then, if I would always have like an extra splash, or probably on that gig I had like an extra crash, like a
Yeah.
16 that I could put on a 22 or something to get a more synthetic vibe.
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, if I'm ever putting stuff on, um, that's the easiest way. But yeah,
Yeah.
usually just convenience, and I was never playing in a way where there was any risk of the cymbal flying off,
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Um, but yeah, yeah, it's just kind of at this point more of a habit than
Yeah.
even necessity.
I mean, but you know what? Listen, man, I tell whenever talk to the younger people, especially people that haven't quite got endorsements yet and don't have a lot of gear, there's that technique and that energy of, changing something in a song is nothing. There's nothing, I mean, in a set even, there's nothing wrong with that because now you have all the overlays for the snare. You have
Exactly.
things like that Zicket snare that have 3 completely different sounds. So if you take that and then you put some overlays, now you got like 15 snares in one set. You could have different
Yep.
sounds, So if you have a ride or something and you're going through a set that is morphing, you might have a jazz influence more ride, and then you pull into a more, traditional kind of drier ride for whatever. I mean, I feel like we need to open up to that energy, putting stuff on drums. You and Chris Dave, and of course my dear friend, damn near like an uncle to me, Jim Keltner, people that play during a song and treat different sections differently. We can do that as drummers. For years we were just taught that it was this static thing. But I think
Yep.
now with the technology and with all these things, we can adjust things and change things that only might happen in a bridge or only might happen in a hook or something. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
that energy, man, is part of the new creativity. Now, speaking of creativity, improvising it's a skill. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like a mental game with yourself, right? So when you're on stage and it's like everything goes away from everything that was rehearsed, when it goes, okay, we got what we rehearsed and now we've taken the tangent here and we're going over here. What's your internal monologue? Like, what are you thinking about to yourself? You know what I'm saying? When this happens, when something just goes up, that's what we're supposed to do, but now we're going here. You know what I'm saying? Are you worried about the form or what?
I think it all depends on the environment that's like been created in advance, like um, whether it's my band or someone else's band, like the more I can learn about again the expectations, you know, um, the more willing I am, or the more relaxed I am, or not, when that might happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I never assume. Let's say I'm on playing someone else's music. I would never assume that it's okay to just go way left,
Yeah. Yeah.
unless I'm invited to.
Yeah.
And then if that's in the air, like guys, like yeah, this is the tune. But if it goes, let's go. It's like okay, you don't have to say that twice.
Right. Yeah.
Um, because the vibe. It's you're out on the road. Maybe if you're recording the prototypical version of a song, that might not be the time to go there. But on
Yeah.
the road, you're playing every night. Isn't that like the joy of it?
Right.
You don't want to take advantage of it. You don't want to be selfish or exploit those moments. But from night to night, those spots that can maybe go, and
Yeah.
let's see. Let's
Yeah.
see. So I
Let's see what
think
happens.
it really comes kind of from the top down, and it's like, that energy is kind of predetermined. It's
Mm-hmm.
the specific choices of where to go musically is not predetermined, but energetically, you could say, it's in the air. Like this is an option if it needs to.
Yeah. There's a tremendous amount of confidence too, and trust that happens in those moments. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And you
Yep.
know, I think you can tell with these groups, man. I mean, dude, Wayne's last group. I mean, bro, it was like, dude. It's just unbelievable the commitment and communication that band had, man. It's just unreal. You know what I'm saying?
The
And
baddest. I want to say about that Wayne band.
yeah,
Um, it feels like I don't know. I've definitely whenever I see those guys, I bumped into Brian a couple times last summer, and inevitably, it's like we're catching up, and then I'm just grilling them with Wayne questions.
sure, of course. Yeah,
But just because, to your point, like what what it sounds like there was very little talking,
mm-hmm,
very little communicated verbally, but of course,
mm-hmm.
so much communicated energetically. But it's almost like, because that band was tricky, because you would see, and they have like reading like 7-page charts, and you're like,
Right.
but it sounds free,
Oh
you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
But Brian said, yeah, it's almost like, I don't want to speak for him. This is my idea of it. Like, if a moment is taking you somewhere, it would be a shame to have this thought of like, oh no, but what about the form?
yeah.
You
Right,
know,
right, right,
like now there are certain situations, with plenty more situations, the form is king more than, the improvising, of course.
right.
But it feels like to me that band was the great example of like, wait, if this moment is telling you to go here, the worst thing you could do is resist that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that is the whole point. And if we happen to land somewhere else, like, wow, that is us in this moment.
yeah.
And Brian said a lot of times, they had the repertoire, and Wayne, inside of an improvisation, inside of a completely different song, he might bring in a new song, and you're like, oh, it's that one, and we'll find our way. So it
Yeah,
was
man.
almost more like signposts rather than
Right,
like
right,
really fixed maps. And to me,
right.
that's so. I mean, of course, in the wrong hands, that might not be music I want to hear. But
Right.
man, in those hands, that's man, those
Yeah,
guys for me are the mountaintop.
yeah.
And
And
I will
that's
say, I don't know when this is going to come out, but today is Miles would have been 100. So
yeah,
it's
yeah, man.
fitting that we're talking about him. I mean, I feel like he's always on my mind, but especially today.
Yeah, man. I see Vince
Yeah.
at my coffee place almost every morning. So,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, that's my one of my hang spots, man. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's
man,
cool.
amazing. Miles would have been 100. That's so crazy. And unfortunately, we also we have to add that we lost Sonny last night.
Man.
Sonny Rollins, man, and what a great career. I mean, one of my favorite albums was that record with him and Max Roach, and the one that has Kiss and Run and Voss Hot on it. I mean, dude, just with Curtis Fuller. I mean, with Clifford Brown. Oh my
Mm,
gosh,
mm, mm.
just such a example of swing, man.
Man, groove, like
Yeah,
swing as
man.
groove,
Yeah,
And
man.
another thing, being at the Vanguard a couple weeks ago, of course, it's like train band at the Vanguard. That's where I go. But I made a point to listen to Sonny at the Vanguard, and just to like get get inside the energy of the room. And it's just, man,
Yeah.
it's just the baddest.
Yeah, man. I
Crazy.
got lucky too, man, on the bucket list, man, because I did do a run with Wayne, just myself, Genius, Herbie, and Wayne, man. We did a run.
Wow.
And that was a bucket list within the bucket list. That was an unexpected bucket
Wow.
list. So now I'm going back and I'm just reflecting on the other stuff, man. Like being in the terminal, waiting to get on the plane together, and rehearsal. And ironically, it was in Ukraine, and all the places are gone. They all got taken out. So we were in
Wow.
Lviv and Kiev, and man, a lot those places are out of here. Matter of fact, I saw Brian on the same show. He was on one of the same festivals that we did out there, and that's when I actually met him for the first time. But it just started making me reflect on the offstage stuff, because I'm like, man, I gotta remember the rehearsals, because I don't think he was doing, he had his thing where it was like, yeah, we're going to rehearse, but it's really going to happen in the show. And it comes
Yep.
back to that thing that we were talking about of trust and communication, man. So, you've been exemplary of that, man. And it's like, super, 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 super excited to see, the rest of the stuff that you got coming in the future, man. Before we get out of here, I can't not speak on this, and we have to just at least address it, because I am curious as your thoughts on AI and what's happening in that arena
Mm.
as a result, as a having something to do with music.
Yeah. I definitely feel undereducated. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
some of that is like a self-defense mechanism,
Right.
like a little bit of ignorance is bliss. I know that's not healthy. I know it's important to learn about it and get out front but for me, you know, I think this is what I've been doing as an exercise. I've been trying to think about the things that I guess by definition are like if I think about it as technology,
Mm-hmm.
it feels a little softer, and I look all around my life and ways that I use technology and embrace it. I mean,
Yeah.
even this sounds silly, but even a calculator,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
man, I don't want to do that shit in my head. Like I'm gonna
Right.
reach for a calculator. I'm gonna reach for the tool that helps me do it, and
Right.
and it even helps me do things that I can't do. So I know that's less creative,
Right. Right.
it's more functional, but I'm trying to come at it that way, if that makes any sense. Like, what are the more functional elements that could be helpful?
Yeah.
Certain automated things in my life that the way I see it is if there are some functional things that can be automated, would that maybe give me more time or energy to put towards the creative stuff?
Yeah.
So in that way, that feels like a win. Now, here I am kind of continuing to ignore how it's affecting the creative stuff as well.
Right.
And I know that's where it gets a little sticky.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where I kind of, at the moment, I actually kind of am I'm a total optimist at heart. I,
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to be in order to like just keep going at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm kind of an eternal optimist, and I'm going to say, you know what? Um, I think I'd like to believe when it comes to creative things that people will still wish for the human expression, the human version of an expression, because as it does get closer and closer, if AI can really get close, which it already feels like it can, I would like to believe that two things exist. There's an identification of things that are AI.
Yeah.
I know people have been talking about that more like an organic food versus not, or labels, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I can't fault anyone where if they're armed with the knowledge of like, this is AI, this isn't, and that for some reason they prefer the AI product, that's none of my business. I mean, to me, that would be surprising, but also I feel like I'm assuming and believing that most people would prefer the human thing,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think
Yeah.
live
We'll
music,
see.
live music so far, that seems like at the moment, that seems the most uh, impenetrable. Like
Sure.
it,
Sure.
you know, I mean, I'm sure someone can prompt AI to make I'm just keep thinking about Herbie, to make hey, something in the style of Herbie Hancock Rocket with this element and this element and this. And it's like, probably spit something out if it's just on in the bank,
Yeah.
you might not think twice. They'd probably be pretty close. But
Right. Right.
I don't know if we'll ever be alive, or if anyone will ever be alive, where there can be a live version of that that really competes, in a way that someone's like, yes, I'm gonna go choose to see that instead of the
Right.
dude.
So, well, I mean, and that's where I feel like, you're absolutely right in a lot of ways. I mean, 100% it can make a song that sounds like it because it excels at, it can definitely recreate things based on things that have happened, but it
Yes.
cannot be in the moment like you are when you're improvising and somebody does something that's never happened before and never going to happen again and you react to it in that moment. Can't do that. So we can right now, there is a possibility. I mean, there's AI that can be programmed into robots that are playing some killing jazz, but it's based off something that already happened. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's not going to be like, hey man, well, let's play this song. Let me sit in. Well, wait a second. That's not going to happen. So, I think you're right. it's going to be a while before that even kicks in. And I think the whole thing is people want to feel the energy of somebody on stage, man, and see it and see the imperfections. You know, I tell people this a lot. When we go to see somebody live, believe it or not, we're going to see the imperfections because we already got the perfect versions on the record. That was the attempt at being perfect. So we're going to see the anomalies. That's why we want to go see it. You see what I'm saying? Or else we just stay home and listen to the record. So, you know, man, next generation is coming up, Mark. I always like to leave off with some legacy and advice, man. What do you have for a young cat who's just like you were now discovering music and maybe leaning towards jazz or maybe not? You know, what do you have for them right now?
I will get to that in a moment. I just have to chime in because, and this is a part of the advice, like you mentioned Chris Dave a few times.
Yeah.
I have to shine a light on him. I feel like he's an example of, I've never once seen him and he made all the choices that I thought he would make.
Right.
You know,
right.
And it's always, but always in support of the music, always like I think that the magic is it's not random. It's not disconnected. I feel like you could program AI to say, hey, try to make choices that Chris Dave would make in it, but there's no way they would be. Well, you can't. He's an alien. I don't know if they have alien intelligence yet.
Right.
But I feel like his spontaneity. I'm a fan. I'd like to believe I know his world, and without fail, I'm surprised. Without fail, and I feel like. I can't speak for him, but I don't. Maybe he's surprising himself too, and I feel like that's kind of the thing, you know. And I would to shoehorn that into advice moving forward. I think, or the optimistic view of I do think, you know, bold individual personalities will, I hope, be rewarded moving forward as things get a little homogenized with the potentially homogenized with AI. I think the things that will start to really hopefully be coveted again, because I feel like individuals sometimes they're too dangerous or they're too unique or they're ahead of the curve, so it's hard to keep up. It's hard to know in real time what's happening, you know. So I'd like to believe that it's difficult because it's not always rewarded in real time, but to like try to, my advice would be, and it's my advice because I'm saying it to myself right now, actually, is try to learn as much about yourself as you can. And because I felt like I spent so much time trying to learn about everybody else, you know, and I didn't even leave time to learn about myself. But obviously, the more you can learn about yourself, hopefully that's the thing you could put out into the world. And obviously, it goes without saying, that's the thing that, you know, there is space for you in the world. You know, I hate to say it, but there isn't space for another Chris Dave because he's here, and man, that guy takes up. He's got a lot of real estate, and I'll tell you, you know, man, being around New York, 2000s, it's like I felt like I was hearing more versions of him, more, you know, caricatures of him than I was him, and I had to make a point to seek out like. I got to make sure I go hear Chris more because I'm hearing more versions of him than him. I felt that way with Tane in the late 90s when I was going out. I'm hearing more versions of Tane than I am hearing him. And it like gave me this whole new love for him. And I like really like, you know, it's like, okay, this is the source. And I think emulation is important, inspiration, influence, all that is important. But, the one thing I could say for sure is there is room for you, but you just gotta. Who are you actually? So to like do the work of wait, who am I? I gotta. Who, you know, what is it that I can contribute, and then you know, go from there.
Yeah, man, that's individuality is key, man, and you're right on the money because. The homogenizing thing is like, yikes. I mean, on Instagram now, on social media, it's just like, wow, man. You know, and it's trippy. Like every once in a while somebody pops out and it's like, okay, and that's an individual voice. But a lot of people, man, are going back and they're copying somebody who copied somebody who copied, and it's just this whole generation of exact verbatim the same drum playing and the same attempt at drum tuning and the same cymbal selection, a lot of times the same cymbal company. So no shade, but I'm just getting reality. So I think that individual thing is important. Now, of course, influence is what makes us who we are, but that's information that you then take and regurgitate and synthesize and put your own thing on it. But only time will tell, man. I hope that people start getting more individual. I hope that the live experience and people that do it keeps getting a little bit more respect. And people like yourself, man, just everybody needs the support because you're out here pushing the envelope, being versatile, being individual, and giving us, a full musical experience, man. So on that note, I really appreciate you being here, Mark. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Guiliana on the TrevBeats Show.
Thanks for having me. Great to catch up. It's been we got to do this in person.
Oh, for sure, man. I feel like we need to, we need to play too.
Yes, let's do it.
But yeah, man, appreciate you, my bro. And we will be in touch soon, man. And everybody, Mark's socials will be down there in the description. So make sure you go check that out. And, we'll see each other soon, man. Thanks again.
Yes. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
Okay, everybody. Appreciate you for rocking with us today. Share this episode with somebody in your circle who's on their musical journey. You never know who needs to hear this conversation. Like, comment, and subscribe. And also follow us on Instagram at Trevor Lawrence Jr. and stay locked in. I'm Trevor Lawrence Jr. It's the TrevBeats Show, and we out.
It's the TrevBeats Show. It's your
It's the TrevBeats Show and we out. We out. It's the TrevBeats Show and we out. It's the TrevBeats.